Hello, good evening. First, let me just thank everyone for coming and on time. I'm sorry for being a few minutes delayed, but the VP wanted me to thing quickly. So I guess we can actually open up the meeting, and we have quorum, so that's a good thing. So good evening. On tonight's agenda, we have the following items. Oh, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Ingrid P. Lewis-Martin. I am the Senior Advisor to Brooklyn Borough President Eric L. Adams. If you're here for the first time, welcome. If you're not here for the first time, welcome back. I need my glasses. So on the agenda tonight, we have a presentation by the New York City Housing Preservation Development on Where We Live NYC, engaging New Yorkers in fair housing planning. So we also have a presentation from the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA, on clean heating and cooling community campaign. Another vote, actually. We have a vote on the New York City Economic Development Corporation Brooklyn Renaissance Plaza lease, and a vote on East New York Industrial Building. Then we have a presentation and a vote for the resolution of New York State Homes and Community Renewal Main Street Facade Improvement Grant. Then we have a presentation by the Center for New York City Neighborhoods on its Resiliency Assessment Program, Flood Help NY, and opportunities for making homes and businesses more energy efficient. Last but not least, we have a public hearing and vote regarding a proposed zoning text amendment to limit the sightings of hotels in manufacturing districts to those granted a special permit by city planning. First, I would like to have the minutes of the June 5th, 2018 board meeting adopted. Copies of the minutes were sent out to all of you. You should have received them. Does any member have a correction that they would like? Anything noted to the meeting? Okay, that's good. May I have a motion to adopt the minutes from our June 5th, 2018 Borough Board meeting? Okay, please.
Teresa Scavo, Community Board 15, motion to adopt minutes.
Thank you kindly. And it's very important that we speak into the microphone and we state our names, because if we read the minutes from the June meeting, some of it couldn't be transcribed properly because we didn't know who some of you were, so please. May I have a second?
Sure. Man Whiteout from Community Board 11, second motion.
Thank you. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those against? Any abstention? Okay, there's one abstention. The motion carries. Tonight's first agenda item is the presentation by the New York City Housing Preservation Development on Where We Live NYC, engaging New Yorkers in fair housing planning. Representatives are here tonight, and they will be available to take questions from the Borough Board members at the end. So we want to welcome Simon Kuritsky. I hope I said that properly. Good. Michael Sandler, Lulu Michelson. Is all three of you here? It's underneath.
Simon couldn't join us today.
Okay.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Sandler. I'm the Director of Neighborhood Planning at HPD. I'm joined by Lulu Michelson, our Fair Housing Engagement Manager, and some other colleagues, Lynn Zhang, our Director of Brooklyn Planning, and Lacey Tauber from our Intergovernmental Relations Department. So we're here today, this evening, to talk about Where We Live NYC, which is the city's comprehensive fair housing planning process. Our agenda, maybe this works. Slides. So we'll start by giving a little context on exactly what we mean when we say fair housing, and then we'll talk about what we're hoping to achieve through this process, and then spend some time talking about how we plan to engage with New York City residents as part of this effort, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. We're happy to take as many questions as you have. So first, what is it that I mean when I say fair housing? The Federal Fair Housing Act, which has its roots in civil rights era activism of the 1960s, was created to protect people against discrimination when they're renting, buying, or securing financing for any housing. The Act specifically prohibits discrimination based on 7 protected classes. That's race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, and the presence of children. New York State and New York City's human rights laws include additional protections based on things like your source of income, your age, sexual orientation, military status, just to give a few examples of the types of things that are protected under fair housing laws. The Fair Housing Act also requires jurisdictions who receive federal funding from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, to affirmatively further the Act's goals. But until pretty recently, HUD didn't really make clear what affirmatively furthering the Fair Housing Act's goals meant in practice. So in 2015, the Obama administration issued new rules articulating the responsibilities of jurisdictions to affirmatively further fair housing, or what we often refer to as AFFH. I think you guys know that city government, we love acronyms. So HUD now says that jurisdictions, whether a city, town, county, or state, must do more than simply prevent discrimination. They must take affirmative steps to overcome segregation and disparities in accessing opportunity. This means, and I quote, replacing segregated living patterns with truly integrated and balanced living patterns, and transforming racially and ethnically concentrated areas of poverty into areas of opportunity. In general, HUD outlines a range of strategies that fall into 2 categories, which we refer to as a balanced approach. And this is the types of ways that you can do this affirmatively furthering fair housing. So this means we have to look at mobility strategies. So how can we create or preserve affordable housing in areas that are high opportunity? These are neighborhoods that have good schools, transit access, healthy environments, to name a few types of opportunity. On the other hand, we also consider place-based strategies. How can we increase opportunity through broader community revitalization efforts, including investments in affordable housing, but also in education, transit, and other amenities in neighborhoods that currently lack opportunity, lack some of these opportunities. So we, the city of New York, know that opportunity is not shared equally by all New Yorkers. Where we live impacts our access to jobs, to education, safety, public transit, positive health outcomes. These disparities are in many ways due to our nation's legacy of segregation and discrimination in the housing market. So Where We Live NYC, the process that we're here to talk about today, is our process to study, understand, and address patterns of residential segregation and concentrated poverty, and how these patterns impact New Yorkers' access to opportunity. This process is being led by HPD in partnership with NYCHA, and in close collaboration with residents, community leaders, service providers, advocates, and other government partners like yourselves. It will culminate in the release of a public report at the end of next year in 2019 that includes measurable goals and strategies. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about how we plan to engage New Yorkers in this process. We will be leading a public engagement process that we've broken into 3 phases. We're here to make sure you know and understand this process and how you can participate, and we're really early in this process. We're just getting started now. So right now we're in the learn phase. This phase sets the groundwork for the planning process. It's an opportunity to understand what fair housing challenges look like in New York City, engage with data, and identify factors that contribute to segregated living patterns in the city. This is taking place this spring and summer. Next, we have the create phase. It's an opportunity to surface ideas for policy solutions based on the information that we collect this summer, and it'll take place this fall. And then finally, in 2019, we'll enter into this finalized phase. This is when we'll share back our initial policy framework for what we plan to do, taking into account all that we've learned from residents, stakeholders, government partners, and our ongoing data analysis. And it'll be the public's opportunity to let us know if we got it right or if we need to make final changes and take new suggestions and get it better. So our engagement strategy involves learning directly from New Yorkers through focus group style meetings and large public workshops. We also have a stakeholder group that we've convened comprised of community leaders, service providers, academic researchers, and advocates who are meeting to provide their professional perspective on these issues. And then lastly, we'll be engaging elected officials, members of the NYCHA Resident Advisory Board throughout this process, as well as community boards. So when we engage New Yorkers, we're guided by 3 core research questions. Our goal is to qualify and complement sort of data that we have from the census or from our programs with the lived experiences of New Yorkers on the ground. So what we want to understand from New Yorkers is, why do New Yorkers live where they live? What are the factors that contribute to housing and neighborhood choice, or the lack of choice to the extent that that exists? And then how does where a New Yorker live impact their life and their household's access to opportunity? And what solutions do New Yorkers want to see? Servicing what people like and don't like about their current housing situation or their neighborhood and how it could be better. So at the heart of this is what we're calling community conversations. These are focus group style meetings with a specific population, community, or neighborhood, with a focus on populations that are protected by fair housing law, and communities that are traditionally left out of public planning government decision making. So for example, our outreach will focus on NYSERDA residents, housing choice voucher holders, immigrants, people with disabilities, seniors, LGBTQ individuals, and individuals with different racial, ethnic, and religious backgrounds. These sessions will be led in partnership with community-based organizations with the help of our consultant, Hester Street, who's a nonprofit technical assistance provider. We're also working with the Interaction Institute for Social Change, a racial justice firm, to ensure that we're creating space to have meaningful and productive conversations about fair housing issues and how they might relate to race and discrimination. We'll also be launching a website pretty soon that will include a downloadable version of this community conversation that people can do with their neighbors, with their community groups, and then we'll also have project updates, resources, and an opportunity on that website to share feedback with us. We'll also be hosting large public workshops in late 2018 and early 2019. These are large public events. They'll give us the opportunity to report back on what we learned from these focus groups, and close the feedback loop with residents who had been part of those. We'll also educate the general public on what fair housing means and fair housing issues and their rights, and then prioritize goals and strategies that will go into the final report. So what do I mean when I say this final report? What is that? Ultimately, it's going to result in an extensive public document which will bring together all of the different pieces we've discussed. So the data and policy analysis, summary of insights learned through the public engagement, and then it'll have concrete goals and strategies with a clear plan for tracking and accountability. So what are goals and strategies? So we'll be developing measurable goals and strategies that are consistent with that balance approach that I mentioned earlier, which is focusing on promoting housing choice in high opportunity neighborhoods and making public investments to ensure that opportunities are distributed more equally across the city. Goals and strategies will likely include some altogether new city policies, but we also expect them to focus on making tweaks to existing programs to better address needs. I'm sure this feels really broad right now, so I'll just give some examples of some of the types of policies that other cities who've gone through similar processes have ended up with. So in Philadelphia, they're expanding support for Section 8 voucher holders to promote access to high opportunity areas in Philadelphia and in the region, in the suburbs as well, with a focus on households with limited English proficiency and households that have children. In New Orleans, their strategies included identifying vacant land in underserved communities to support affordable housing development, but also things like food access, recreation, and green space in those communities. New Orleans is also developing a formal plan to assess how banks are meeting their obligations under the Community Reinvestment Act. And then in Los Angeles, their plan included strategies to improve fair housing enforcement, like strengthening protections for transgender individuals and undocumented immigrants. Those are just some examples. The strategies that ultimately we use in New York will respond to our needs and the needs that are raised by stakeholders and New York City residents through this process. So we're forging ahead with this process at a time where HUD and the federal government are really stepping back from issues of segregation and discrimination. We see New York as a national leader on this issue. Ultimately, we see this as a real opportunity for the city to take a stance on this issue. And we also think it's a great opportunity for New York to step away from discussing individual development projects or land use actions and take a more comprehensive view of discrimination and how the legacy of segregation impacts our city today. So just to clarify next steps, and then I'll take some questions. This summer, we're going to launch our full public website and these community conversations. We invite community boards to download and complete the community conversation toolkit, and we can be available to help community boards walk through that if necessary. This fall, we'll conduct a series of public workshops, and we'll continue to provide opportunities for public input through the submission of the final report, which again is in the fall of 2019. And we wanted to brief the Borough Board really early in this process before we started our public engagement to ensure you have the opportunity to ask questions and understand how you can stay engaged once we do start that public engagement. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and I appreciate the time.
Yes, the floor is open to Borough Board members or representatives.
Good evening, Cesar Zuniga, Community Board 7. So I guess I have a lot of questions, but I guess the one that I want to focus on is what opportunities exist to do collaborations in communities? We have underway our own assessment within Community Board 7, and obviously one of the areas of priority is housing and affordable housing. So we'd love to sort of understand more how we can maybe merge the two processes.
Yeah, so I think we understand that this process doesn't exist in a vacuum. There's existing city policy, there's programs that are being implemented now, we have rezonings that are being considered right now, and then we also have tons of city initiatives that are designed to increase opportunity that are already out there, and then other city plans that control how investments are dispersed throughout the city. And so we see this process as something that sits outside of that and looks at all of those different things that are happening and how they come together and how they impact residential living patterns, how that might relate to segregation, and how that relates to access to opportunity. So I think the short answer is we'd be happy to collaborate. We'd love to learn more about what work you are doing, and I have my contact info, and I'm happy to share that with the Borough Board.
Richard Flatto, Community Board 3. I heard you mention the term high opportunity neighborhoods several times. Are there specific neighborhoods that you have in mind, and how are you defining a high opportunity neighborhood?
Yeah, I think that's a really excellent question, and it really goes to the core of this initiative. Right now, we're thinking about opportunity in a few buckets. So we're thinking about opportunity around education, employment, transportation, and health and the environment are sort of the big buckets that we're thinking about opportunity and how neighborhoods might relate to that. And we want to understand from New Yorkers how opportunity, what that means in their life. And so no, there are not specific neighborhoods that we've said, these are the high opportunity neighborhoods and these are the low opportunity neighborhoods. We're thinking about how residential living patterns affect access to those things, to education, to employment, to transportation, and to living in a healthy and safe environment.
I'll just jump in and I'll just quickly add that the term high opportunity neighborhood actually comes from HUD, and so this whole process comes from kind of a HUD mandate, and so we know that the way that HUD looks at high opportunity neighborhoods is kind of data driven and can be a little bit narrow, and so part of the community conversation goal is to expand our understanding of what opportunity really means in New Yorkers' lives. And so by having all of these conversations over the next few months, we also hope to kind of expand that definition and together create a definition of what opportunity looks like in New York City that's more nuanced and really responds to our local context.
Hi, Janice Morgan, Community Board 16. So this conversation, I think, is one that most communities will welcome because I think it's a conversation that most communities have been asking for. Knowing the fact that a lot of units have already been built, a lot of plans have already come together, and SURE plans to be modified. I'm curious, though, with regards to laws being changed in favor of the tenants, are there examples of how a process like this has been able to reverse some of the distribution of units, in prior projects to help bring those units into affordability for people in the community?
That's a great question. So I think this project, it came from a HUD mandate to look at this, but we know that New York City is a city that has to understand how segregation, concentrated poverty exists in relation to displacement, to gentrification, and to the affordability crisis that we have here in New York. And so we definitely want to understand how those two relate, and then the loss of affordable housing in neighborhoods that are high opportunity, the way that the affordability crisis limits choice for New Yorkers, or determines what type of New Yorkers have choice in which neighborhoods they live in. These are all in scope of this initiative. We have the power to, the city of New York, control New York City laws, New York City government programs. We don't control state laws, we don't control federal laws, but we imagine that this report will include recommendations or an analysis of the extent to which state laws, federal funding mechanisms, those types of things do impact the conditions here in New York. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does, to some extent, and obviously, there's a lot of work that will need to go into dissecting this more.
Teresa, and after Teresa, the gentleman.
Teresa Scavo, Community Board 15. You work directly for HPD.
That's correct.
Okay. Was this mandated by HUD to do this project?
So it's surprisingly a complicated answer. This was mandated by HUD to do this project. So the rule to affirmatively further fair housing, that comes from the Fair Housing Act. That obligation exists for all municipalities regardless of this project. That's from a 1968 law. The project itself, the assessment, how doing this assessment was part of a 2015 rule from HUD that said that municipalities have to do this every 5 years.
So now, how many people from your HPD are assigned to work on this, and how much of a budget did they give you to do this job?
So just really quickly to answer, just to finish answering the first question, the Trump administration actually delayed implementation of this rule. And so while we were required to submit this in 2019, we now will not be required to submit it for another 5 years, but we are forging ahead anyways. We think that this is an important project that we're doing regardless of what the due date from HUD is. So now to answer your second question, there's not a specific budget. We have a very large staff within HPD that is working on this. So we have our team that is working on the public engagement process. We have our Office of Policy and Strategy who have data analysts and policy experts who are working on this.
Is
We're
there
also
a
working with
number?
staff. There is not a number. So the answer is no, there's not a budget for this initiative. We have a number of staff that are working on this over the course of 2 years.
20 people, 30 people?
We can get back to you on how many people are working on it. I would say it's 10 to 15 people that are working on it right now. But then there's also people working on it at NYCHA and at a whole number of city agencies. This is a collaboration across city government. This is a big project.
Thank you.
Camacho, CB4, Robert, new appointee. You mentioned affordable. It's that word scares me because I think we need deeply affordability for your service to work in regards to the people that are disenfranchised and can't afford to live in communities like mine, where they're pushing us away. I think it should be mentioned about deeply affordability, not just affordable or MIH, because that doesn't work for some of mine. And also, could it work in big developments that the city don't own, where we can make affordability with the landlords also to force them not desegregate and push our people away. As you see on the thing, it says community boards. We want to bring our community back. And I think with just using that phrase or those words are not working for us, working for some, but not for the people that made the place what it's supposed to be.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rancho. I think we understand that this process, again, does not exist in a vacuum, that understanding segregation, concentrated poverty, access to housing choice in New York City, we have to understand gentrification, displacement, and the affordability crisis, and that is a part of this initiative, and I appreciate your comments.
Yes.
Good evening, Glomani Bravo Lopez from Councilmember Stephen Levin's office. Thank you for the presentation. I just had a question looking at this through a general welfare lens as to whether you've had any communication with Department of Homeless Services on this, stepping outside of HPD, only because like folks obviously who don't have a community at the moment to call their own, who are in shelter, one of the big issues that they face is use of vouchers, which limits them geographically where they could be citywide, especially since this covers fair housing planning. what can be done to ensure that aside from how strict that voucher is, to hold landlords accountable, that landlords and private landlords are not able to get away with denying housing to folks when they mention the word voucher, link, SEPs, what have you.
Yeah, I mean, you've just mentioned a classic example of housing discrimination. This is, a perfect example of the type of thing that is in scope of this initiative. We're working closely with DHS, who has, links and theft vouchers. HPD also administers Section 8 vouchers, as does NYCHA. So all of those agencies are working together on this initiative.
I'll just add really quickly that in our stakeholder group, we also have folks who specifically focus on serving homeless New Yorkers, and then we're also going to be doing outreach through our community conversations to have community conversations exclusively with people who are currently homeless or in shelter or have previously experienced that, to make sure that their lived experience is factored into this process as well. And so while homelessness was not actually something that was technically required for us to cover from HUD, it's something that we know is a real challenge in New York and is very connected to fair housing, and something we're taking really seriously in this process.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Well, I have one. You mentioned stakeholders and that there were a number of them. How did you select them?
We have a relatively open stakeholder group, so organizations that are interested in this process are welcome to contact us. We have a website or email address, where we live, nyc@hpd.nyc.gov. The stakeholder group, we invited hundreds of community organizations, advocates, academics, and members of the NYCHA Resident Advisory Board. If you're an organization and you're interested in becoming a part of it, you can email us at wherewelive@nyc.
Okay, so at this time, we'd like to thank you for your presentation, and hopefully you'll come back again, or maybe you'll be invited to attend a community board meeting in September. Tonight's second agenda item is a presentation from New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA, on clean heating and cooling community campaign. So we have representatives here from NYSERDA. We want to welcome Donovan Gordon. How are you? Good. Thank you for coming. So you can please go to the mic and state your name.
I'm a legislative director.
What district is that?
Oh, Sheepshead Bay.
Well, good evening. Again, I'm Donovan Gordon from NYSERDA. So greetings from Albany. Took the train down this morning and taking the train back up tonight. So again, thank you for the invitation. And I'm here to tell you that I like to spend some of New York State's money in Brooklyn. So hopefully you want to hear a little bit more about that. And secondly, since the clicker thing isn't working, I'm going to have to manually do this, so I'll hold this, and I promise not to drop the mic when I'm done. So here we go. But I will also say, I go back with Borough President when he first started RESET, when he just got elected, the Renewable and Sustainable Energy Task Force. So I was a member of that. I'm originally from Long Island and got the job up at NYSERDA, and now I saw him a few months back at a conference that now I can actually really help you. I can bring something to the table. So I presented to Jeff and Ryan a couple weeks ago on this Clean Heating, Cooling Communities program, and they thought it would be good for me to come and explain the program to this board. So. First, I want to give a little background before I get into the specifics of the program, in laying out basically some of the goals that the governor has set out to really reduce carbon emissions in New York State. We're not climate change deniers. We believe that climate change is real. As you know, New York State is part of the U.S. Climate Alliance that's still following the Paris climate agreement. So we are extremely committed, and we actually have some of the most aggressive renewable energy goals in the country. So this is some of the goals that he set really for what we call reforming the energy vision, REV. So by 2030, these are some of the milestone goals to reduce our carbon emissions by 40% from our 1990 levels by 2030. But the most important thing is by 2050, 80% reduction from where we are. And again, I'll show you some illustrations to show that. I'm going to focus more on this than on the others. We want 50% of renewable energy, electric generation by renewables, whether it's offshore wind, solar, and things of that nature, and more energy efficient buildings. I want to bring it to home here. And what I will say, statewide, in the New York State, a third, almost 33% of the carbon emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions in New York State comes from buildings, how we heat and cool our buildings. About 20% from the electric generation and the rest from cars, transportation. So buildings is a really, really big sector that we have to address if we want to reduce carbon. People think just put up solar panels or drive an electric vehicle and we'll cover it. No, if we don't reduce carbon from buildings, we're not hitting any of these goals. But New York City has probably the most aggressive goal for any city in the world, as far as I can tell. They have similar goals to us to reduce the carbon emissions by 80% from the 2005 level. So our baselines are a little different, but the ultimate goal that they have, this is the roadmap, New York City roadmap for 80 by 50. So the baseline was 2005. This is where you were in 2014. This is where we want to get to for 2050. If you can see, the blue are buildings. So in terms of the impact or the contribution to reducing the carbon emissions and hitting the ultimate goals by 2050 is coming from this big sector here. 46% of the emissions that needs to be reduced is going to come between buildings and some of the electric generation. So from here to there, that is 32 years. That is a daunting, daunting goal. And sometimes I wonder why I took this job. Oops, I'm going backwards here. Oops. So one of the big issues when we get into clean heating and cooling is some of the barriers that we're trying to address now is the cost. It is a little more expensive than traditional HVAC systems. Also, because it's, I wouldn't call it new technology, but it's fairly new and different. There aren't that many trained installers, designers, architects, engineers that can really engineer and install these systems. It's a problem, but that is probably one of the biggest opportunities, which I'll talk about in a little bit. This is the biggest issue that I'm trying to address, and that's what our communities program is trying to address. Lack of consumer knowledge and awareness. They're not aware of some of the technologies, these heat pump technologies. And while we're nice and cool in this building, I'm going to have to talk to the mayor's office or the city buildings office, because window air conditioning is probably the least efficient air conditioning system you could use in terms of power consumption. And then the lack of affordable financing for these technologies. So, to get into what the program is. It's literally grassroots campaigns that are locally organized, community outreach efforts at the county, city, town, borough, neighborhood, or regional level. We're asking for a minimum of 40,000 residents, so Brooklyn certainly covers that, and we're asking for a 2 to 3 year commitment. So this is not do a quick campaign, talk about renewable energy and walk away and it's a feel good. We're asking for a real commitment. We want to make real change. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Solarize. This was a solar campaign that was done to introduce people to solar. It's similar to that. So it's a similar concept. It's just we're now introducing clean heating and cooling. So basically air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps. I'll get into some of the technologies later, but that's primarily what it is. We had our initial round, and literally I'm taking the 9 o'clock train back to Albany for an all-day meeting tomorrow. We're kicking off the first round of our community campaigns, and we're now we're getting ready to roll out the solicitation for our second round. And that's why I came down to talk to the borough president's office to see if we can get Brooklyn to get on board with this and take some of our money. The first round, we're investing $1.8 million in 8 communities across the state, covering 15 counties, and they're all Westchester and above, nothing below Westchester. And most of the buildings in the state, certainly, well, I'll tell us, 90% of the buildings over 25,000 square feet are all south of Westchester. So if we want to make a real impact and a real dent on quote unquote decarbonizing buildings, it's got to happen down here. But, and we actually upped the ante on the second one. It's about $2 million we're investing, but I'll tell you how that's invested. Again, the second round should be open in another couple weeks. We'll roll that out. So I can speak a little more freely now because it's not out public, but once the solicitation is out, I could only answer qualifying questions to the solicitation, not generic questions about what the program is. So that's why the timing is good for me to be here. So the goal, really, as I mentioned, increase awareness. This is a consumer awareness initiative here to educate folks on the technologies, but also the benefits of this. Now, I will also say this because you hear with the NYSERDA or other folks, one of the biggest problems, particularly in inner city areas, is the high degrees of asthma. You know, New York City banned number 6 soil. There's a health issue. Well, with these technologies, clean heat and cooling, there's no carbon emissions on site. So it is a healthy technology. We want to help reduce costs. So we want to reduce costs by really bringing more people into a room, trying to learn about the technology, bringing contractors and connecting them, and hopefully reducing the soft cost, the acquisition cost. And what we're asking contractors to do, once they want to participate in one of these programs, is to offer a discount. So people that are coming on board, contractors who've signed on through this, we're helping them by bringing them and bringing the customers, potential customers to them, offer some level of discount to participate in the program. Obviously, this sort of ties to increased local adoption. We need more heat pumps in buildings. That's just a fact. This is where my heart is. I mentioned that there's a lack of trained installers and people in this space. Workforce training is a big part of this. I just want to say that I want to make sure that the folks that live in the community are helping install these equipments in the community. So while you're cleaning your environment, you're also providing employment for the youth and others within the community. And also best practices. See if this thing works here, maybe it can work someplace else. So we're looking to get learnings from each of these campaigns. So here's what it is. The funding is up to $500,000. And to offset the cost, we'd like to hire a full or part-time program campaign director. We'll offset the cost of outreach initiatives, campaign events. You know, maybe we can borrow this room and have an event. Folks from Brooklyn come in and learn about these technologies. Volunteer development, and we specifically, so this $500,000 is broken into different pieces. One piece for the director to hire a staff. Another piece for an idea to bring low and moderate income residents into the fold. And really, we're asking for ideas. And the best ideas, we'll fund it, several $100,000. So this $500,000 is broken into different segments. And we also allocate money for workforce training and development. As far as eligible proposals, only a community-based organization or a municipality can apply for this funding. But if the municipality, so if I'd like the Borough President's office to apply, but if they say, no, we don't want to do this, and another community-based organization wants to do this, it has to be supported by the local municipality. So we want the community representatives to be vested in this and know what's going on and have a stake in this. So we want your input and support of this. The eligible technologies, what we call cold climate air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps or geothermal heat pumps. There's solar heat and cooling technologies, solar hot water. Well, I'm not pushing high efficiency biomass wood heat in Brooklyn, but that's one of the eligible technologies. And we also look to partner, we'd like for the organization to partner with a local financial institution to offer some kind of loan product, local educational institutions or facilities, training facilities, whether it's Medgar Evers, whether it's Queens College, I mean, whatever there is, or if there, particularly if there's a HVAC or air conditioning training facility, would like to get engaged with them, and the local utility. I talk to Con Ed and National Grid all the time. They're on board. So if we decide to go, which I certainly hope we do with a campaign, we can certainly bring both of them to the table, and they'll be willing participants. The other programs that we have, so this $500,000 is just to run this program, but NYSERDA has several other programs to support these technologies. We have an air source heat pump rebate program. This actually goes to the contractors, though. It's $500 per unit, goes to the contractor. But also, Con Edison has an air source heat pump rebate incentive program, so you can get a rebate and the contractor gets their incentive. For the ground source, it's up to $1,500 per ton, on average, $4,000 to $6,000 in rebates from that. I should add that now there is a federal tax credit of 30%, only for ground source though, 30% of the total cost of the system, you can get a tax credit for that. So, and that's on top of this and on top of the other stuff. So as you start seeing, when this stuff starts adding up, now you can see where these technologies can start becoming cost effective. The only reason I put this in here, we call this the Geothermal Clean Energy Challenge. I'm engaged in a relationship and partnership with NYPA, New York Power Authority, to identify and install geothermal on state and local government buildings. We're under an umbrella called Lead by Example. It's one thing for the governor to say, we got all these lofty goals, and the city to say, you know, reduce carbon 80% by 2050. Well, then, what are we going to do? So we want to start with our building. I've already talked to the person that oversees the buildings, these buildings here, and already told them we need to get some heat pumps in here and get these window air conditioners out. So that conversation is going to happen. But we're looking at large-scale campuses and to show that this technology works, and also demonstrate that the state is serious about this, and we're putting it on our own buildings. We also have a co-op marketing fund where we'll co-op local marketing with contractors and manufacturers, and also with manufacturers we'll co-op training. So while we'll allocate some monies for training in our co-op program, you could also access additional funding for training through this co-op support. So you could actually get, I'm not calling it double dipping, but you can add on to this, layer onto it. And it's done purposely because we want to make sure that we allocate and provide the proper resources needed to get stuff done. Another tidbit I want to share with you in terms of workforce, that about a little under 30% of all the HVAC contractors in the state will be retiring in the next 5 to 7 years. But also as we develop this clean, green economy, they're saying there'll probably be a 20% increase in jobs. So this is a tremendous opportunity for kids. I'm focusing on kids in middle school, even grade school, that by the time they're ready and come through the pipeline and have been exposed and educated about these technologies and how they work and how they can, what space they can play in it, there's a job waiting for them. That's what this is about. The goal is for 2050. That's 32 years from now. So I tell this to my 19-year-old nephew, you want to get into this. You know, you're almost 20, 30. This is a career for you. You get in this now and ride it till the goal, to 2050, you should be good. So, and also there are other programs that we have that I just couldn't, they told me I had 10 minutes, so, but the other folks probably took 20, I don't know, I could speak on this all day, but there are other programs that we have for new construction, for multifamily. There is a strong focus and emphasis on low to moderate income. Again, another tidbit. 55% of all New York State residents are classified as low to moderate income. So if we want to hit these goals, everybody's got to play in the space. Everybody's got to start cleaning up the environment in which they live, which is their indoor environment, which is how they heat and cool their building. So I think that was my last slide. I'll be happy to take any questions or comments.
Do we have any questions?
Yeah. Sorry. Jack Pleshnik from Councilmember Chaim Deutsch's office. So your organization, the agency that you work for, do they also discuss the development of the installation of wind turbines, for example, offshore wind turbines or onshore wind turbines in New York City?
Yeah, it's another area. It's NYSERDA, it's the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. So we're involved in just about everything, all things energy in New York State. So yes, that is the. So in terms of, let me go back to the slide here. So the energy supply here, basically what it's saying is that a big chunk of the reduction is going to come from the energy supply. It's almost zero. So that's basically offshore wind.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to follow up. So,
Sure.
Is there any plans right now on track when it comes to development of offshore or onshore wind turbines in New York City?
Again, not my area.
Not your area,
But
okay.
the answer is absolutely yes.
Okay.
And it's more offshore than onshore.
Okay.
The problem with onshore is the fact that these wind turbines are high in case of when these hurricanes, collide. So offshore is more palatable. It's tough getting permits for onshore because you have to have enough space that if it does collapse, it's not collapsing on somebody else's property and home.
Okay.
But offshore wind is probably the main renewable electric source that we're going to utilize because we don't have enough land space to put enough solar panels to generate the kind of electricity that we'll need.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Richie?
Richard Flateau, Community Board 3. When will the RFP be open for the clean heating and cooling campaign, and how long do you think it'll be open?
Okay. Our hope is to get it out by the end of July, and it'll probably be open till maybe September. Yeah, we usually give it about two and a half to 3 months to give people enough time. And again, I've already had meetings with the borough president's office, and as soon as the solicitation's out, we're going to let them know that it's out. Now, having said that, yes, they can apply, but maybe community can apply as well too, because I'm particularly interested in some of them, whether it's East New York, whether it's Reddit. I mean, I particularly want to make sure that some of the communities that could use some help in terms of employment and training gets that.
Hi, Janice Morgan, CB 16. 2 questions. How many awards are going to be made across, I guess, the different regions?
Yes. So in the first round, we were budgeted to do between 3 and 5 awards, and we wound up doing 8.
Okay.
So the solicitation is going to be out for about $2 million, and again, the support could be up to $500,000, and it's going to be 3 different categories called A, B, and C. So one would be just for the campaign director and running campaigns. Another section would be ideas for low to moderate income, and then another category for workforce training. So you don't have to apply for all 3 categories, but all 3 categories added up is where we get to the $500,000.
Okay, and then my next question is with regards to the BQDM, how is this connected to all of the, I guess, the work and prior programs that were connected to the BQMD projects kind of throughout the state and locally?
Yeah, it's totally separate. So I mean, so it's not mutually exclusive. So you can take advantage of that and take advantage of this, and then we can work together with Con Ed and National Grid in their BQDM area, which is an area that they want to focus on. That's where they have a demand issue. And I will say, actually, Con Ed has it's an RFI out for ideas for clean heating solutions. It's on their website, and I can forward it to the borough president's office. So, and Con Ed is public, so I'll say it. They actually have a gas shortage now. They have a problem now. They don't have enough gas supply to service the customers they have now, and they're growing like between 5 and 10% a year. So they're projecting like 5 years out, they got a real big problem. And that's just half of it. So it's a distribution issue. So they won't have enough product to sell. The other issue is the environmental issue, because now a lot of environmentalists are saying, you know, we need to get off gas. We've got the oil part, now let's get off gas. Mm-hmm. To get to 80% reduction by 2050, we have to get off gas for the most part. So Con Edison Gas, on the gas side, is saying they would like to initiate these heat pump and clean heating initiatives to help reduce the gas demand, so they have more to go around for everybody else. So it's a big part of their strategy going forward.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cesar Zuniga, Community Board 7. So I have, I guess, two questions. And first, I guess, your point about we have to get started somewhere and we have to actually do something intentional to reduce our carbon footprint is absolutely right. I totally agree with that idea. So I guess, do you require any major infrastructure investments to do this at a sort of a broader scale? Because, you know, building this awareness, I think it seems to me to be like a real worthwhile endeavor in a lot of these communities. So I'm wondering, what beyond the awareness, is there an infrastructure, a big, massive infrastructure investment? And can you talk a little bit about it?
So that's why I put in the highlights in the last bullet. NYSERDA has multiple programs from energy efficiency. So I'll say a couple things. So while we have these different technologies, clean heating and cooling technologies that we're talking about, one of the things that we're also pushing is what we call energy efficiency, envelope tightening. So insulate your house, seal your windows, put in, upgrade the insulation, things like that, because that now reduces your thermal load. So you won't need to spend as much money on your heating and cooling equipment because your house is much more efficient. The other thing I do want to point out, I think I'm going to have to copyright this quote here, that we've got calendar years, we got fiscal years, we got dog years. Now I'm calling them HVAC years. So the typical lifespan of a traditional conventional HVAC system is about 15 years. That's the useful life. People don't replace them until they break. So let's say 20 years. All right. So if someone puts in a brand new oil or gas boiler or furnace today, they're done for the next 15, 20 years. So they're not helping me for 2030. All right, so I got to come back in 2038, which not me, but whoever succeeds me is going to come back in 2038 to try to convert them. And if they don't, 2050 is a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. So when I say in HVAC years, got two, really one and a half. So I usually try to say it's a sense of urgency, because when you hear 2050, you think, oh my gosh, that's 32 years away. But in terms of the HVAC years, it's 2. So we don't have a lot of time to convert people.
Thank you for presenting. I'm Malik Wright from Councilmember Jamani Williams' office. You mentioned that this program has in some way, shape, or form been rolled out upstate, Westchester, maybe Long Island, I suppose.
Long Island, you have to pay into the system benefits charge,
Okay.
SBC, so Long Island's doing their own thing separately, but yeah.
Is there any early preliminary, kind of outcomes for what, I know you said 2 to 3 years, but are you guys seeing any positives so far?
Not yet, because we just started. Literally tomorrow, we're having an all-day kickoff meeting for the first round.
Okay.
Okay, so, and why I say south and west, people have to submit proposals, so those are just the proposals that we got. We talked to the mayor's office, we want to talk to Urban Green, that's why I'm talking to you guys, so
And you said the expenditure is going to be like a max of $500,000.
Yes.
So
Per campaign, yes.
per what?
Per campaign. So,
campaign.
so let's say for the Brooklyn, yes. But let's say our president office want to do something, but a couple of community boards say we want to get together and do our own
Okay.
thing separate.
Okay.
You could actually apply separately too.
So it's possible that that in a concerted area there could be more than
It
$500,000.
could.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, so Mr. Donovan, we thank you.
I'm tempted to drop the mic.
Don't drop the mic. We thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
presentation, and I'm sure that we'll all become energy efficient by 2050. Tonight's third agenda item is a vote on New York City Economic Development Corporation's Brooklyn Renaissance Plaza lease and a vote on the East New York Industrial Building. Representatives of New York City EDC are here tonight and will be available to take questions from the Borough Board members. They gave us the presentation during the June 5th Borough Board meeting. Both draft resolutions were previously distributed to the members of the Borough Board and are available here tonight. At this time, I'd like to open up the floor for questions and comments from any members of the Borough Board or the representatives prior to the vote. So, Borough Board members, speak now. Richard? We got to do roll call. How are you? So we're going to welcome Ricky DaCosta. Daryl, who's Daryl? Hi, Daryl, welcome. And Stacy Ann. She's not here? Jian Jin Ling. How are you? Welcome back. Okay. So, Richard, are you ready?
Yeah. Are we discussing the East New York Industrial Building now, or is it either one?
We're going to do
'Cause
two
you got
votes.
two.
We're going to do two votes. So
All right,
we're going to
so-
do the economic, we're going to do two, the Renaissance Plaza lease and a vote on the East New York Industrial Building.
Okay.
So you can ask questions
All right.
about both of
So I
them.
have a question about the East New York Industrial Building. The last time you gave a presentation, I had some questions about the financial performance of the facility, and I was wondering if you had any answers about that.
Yeah, so good evening, everybody. Ricky DaCosta with the New York City Economic Development Corporation. In response to Mr. Flatto's question, the historical performance over the past decade, the building has averaged about a little less than 100,000 net operating income, which doesn't include any of the staff costs or anything. So just, you know, straight up expenses and revenues at the facility, not including any kind of administrative functions that happen outside of the building.
Richard, did you hear the answer to your question?
Yeah, you said it was 100,000 in net operating income, but that's not taking into account the staff costs, say for, so what would it be after the expenses associated with EDC then?
I mean, it'd be hard to say, but it would be, I mean, considering we have how many people working on this, 2 to 3 at a time, it'd probably end up being in the negative. On average, again, over the course of the decade.
Yes.
Cesar Zuniga, Community Board 7. I guess I have a real macro question. The local community board and elected officials are supportive of both of these renewals?
Without putting words in anyone's mouth, Janice and Joy for East New York Industrial, Glomani and Irene for Renaissance Plaza. I think we're all good, but
okay,
honestly, feel free to dispute.
Great.
Well, it's not we're not taking a vote now, so.
You
I
will
don't-
be voting tonight.
Right,
So
right.
ask all of your questions.
No, I'm just saying, he's asking if we're in support of it or not, and so I don't want to vote prematurely.
No, ask your questions.
But we did hear the presentations. We've been receiving presentations on the East New York building for some time, and so currently although there's always more that can be done, we are not opposed to moving forward with the process. We definitely, there's more that needs to be done with regards to making sure there's not displacement of tenants who have been there for a long time, and obviously that the costs are affordable, and that it gives opportunity to local businesses and not just a plan to bring in industries or businesses from outside of the community, and obviously that it creates jobs for the community. That's the most important thing for us, and so that's what we are holding EDC and the tenants in the building accountable to.
Hello, this is Joy Simmons from Councilmember Inez Barron's office. Our office sentiments are very similar to Community Board 16. We've been meeting with EDC as well as the tenants of the buildings, the ones that wanted to stay. So we've met with them. We've been speaking with them consistently to make sure that the initial tenants there were not displaced. They had the opportunity to stay. And we did get feedback that at least one was supportive, one agreed to the terms, and the other tenant said they were still in negotiations, but he was pretty much late in terms of his process in getting back to us. And so we couldn't really, hold everything up because one person was indecisive and had not been, cooperative from the beginning. So basically, similar.
Camacho, see before, is that going to be an amendment to this that they make sure, because once you go through, what's going to guarantee them to do what you want them to do? Once done, then it's a done deal. And then all that other stuff, sometimes people get amnesia. They forget that that's what you put in there. So maybe there should be a stipulation or something in there that they do what they say they're gonna do. Because I've been down that road before, and we have people that promise us things, and all of a sudden it disappears. They said they never said that. So maybe we need to make sure we tighten the bolts and screws and make sure that they're accountable to what they promise us.
Yeah, and I think just to be clear, the two things, so on Renaissance Plaza, what we're voting on is making the lease that NYSERS, which is the tenant in the space, has with Renaissance Plaza line up with the lease that the city has. Currently, there's a 2-year gap. And with East New York Industrial, we are just seeking to renew the master lease, which would basically just mean that EDC maintains control of the building and is able to actually engage in the types of conversations that we've been having with both folks in the community and the tenants who'd like to remain.
Teresa Scavo, Community Board 15. Today, you're paying on the Renaissance Plaza $1.734 million, correct? Excuse me?
You're talking about the rent that's currently being paid right now, right?
Currently, it's 1.734. In April of 2020, it'll be 2.711.
Yes, that's correct.
And in 2025, it'll be 3.117.
Yeah, that's correct.
And this is for 2 floors?
Yeah, for 2 floors.
Is this a net lease?
Yeah, this is a net lease.
Net.
Yeah.
Please ask all your questions.
Is there a council representative for the Renaissance Plaza here? Or
Yes.
and what is their position?
Yeah, so Glomani Bravo Lopez for Councilmember Stephen Levin. I did want to speak just to address Caesar's question on this, and he had a question pertaining to cost. But specifically with respect to the lease overlap and ensuring that NYSERDA is in place, Councilmember had no objection to this.
Okay, do we have any other questions about the Renaissance? Do we have any other questions about the vote on the East New York?
And the board for the Renaissance?
Excuse me?
The board for the Renaissance Plaza?
Yeah, East New York.
What would they, no.
The
board-
Renaissance Plaza is.
CB2,
CB2, and I believe they're here as well.
What did they say? I'm sorry, did they say
That would
anything? I
be
just
up
want to
to
know
them.
what they were saying.
Then you should direct it to them and ask
Did they
them.
have an opinion about those rates for the, those rental rates?
Yeah,
Because it does seem very high.
it does. They indicated that these were the projections of the rental values in the future years, and it applies to all of the properties. The thing that we'd be voting on is simply to bring the NYSERDA's lease basically on the same schedule as the rest of the city offices there, which includes Community Board too. We're there.
Just so we could be clear, the issue with the Renaissance, I don't think it was the rates. It was that they were out of parity in terms of the timing. So they wanted to make, right, okay, well, you all vote. I'm just saying, but that's what it was,
Yeah,
timing.
it was just to put them so that
On the same scale.
everyone will expire at the same
same
time,
time.
so the city can negotiate for everyone at one shot.
Because the rates will still be the rates anyway, regardless, but it's so that they would negotiate at the same time because the timing was off. So that was the Renaissance piece. So, do we have any other questions about the Renaissance Plaza lease before we do roll call? Okay, so
I had a question about the East New York Industrial Park.
we're going, let me, Richard, we're talking about the
Just Renaissance. Okay.
Renaissance, just Renaissance, all right? Just Renaissance. I think that's an easier lift because that's just to have everybody on the same timing for the expiration of the leases. So, all right, so, yeah. Well, I want to do a roll call. Oh, sorry. May I have a motion? I would like to have a motion to approve the proposed lease of the, I would like to have a motion to have approved the proposed lease of the Brooklyn Renaissance Plaza.
Irene Janner, CB2, so we would move that.
Hold on, you're saying you have a question?
No.
About the vote. Are we voting separately?
Yes, we are. Okay, so let me say this again. I would like to have a motion to approve the proposed lease of the Brooklyn Renaissance Plaza. That's what we're voting on. May I have a motion, please?
Irene Janner, Community Board 2, so moved.
May I have a second?
Manuel Lau from Community Board 11 will second the motion.
Okay, so,
Community Board 2 members of the City Council and the Borough President Adams are eligible to vote on this item only. CB2?
Yes.
oh, so may I have a, thank you. May I have a second? You can't.
Kim Robinson, Councilmember Samuel.
Thank you.
Now we'll move forward on the vote. Once again, Community Board 2?
Yes.
Councilmember Levin?
Yes.
Councilmember Barron?
Yes.
Councilmember Cornegie? Councilmember Cumbo? Councilmember Deutsch?
Yes.
Councilmember Espinal? Councilmember Brannan?
Yes.
Councilmember Lander? Councilmember Mizell?
Yes.
Councilmember Ampry? Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams? Thank you. Borough President Adams? Next item.
So the motion carries. All right. Now, before we vote on the next item, do we have any other questions to ask on the East New York Industrial Building?
Yes, I had a question. Richard Flato, Community Board 3. I recall from the last presentation that there was also going to be a capital investment from EDC. And I think that was $3 million, right?
6.
$6 million. I was just curious, why isn't that part of the resolution?
That money's already been allocated? Yeah, it's already been allocated.
Do we have any more questions from Borough Board members? I believe a gentleman is here who said he would like to make a statement. So please come forward, state your name. Take a mic.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me a few moments to speak on this matter. My name is Bill Wilkins. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the LDC of East New York. I'm also the bid manager. The East Brooklyn bid is one of the oldest bids in New York City. It's also the first industrial bid in New York City. We played a significant role, along with EDC, with devising the conception of the EDC incubator. From a historical perspective, by definition, it was to be an incubator. Businesses come, they grow, there's a revolving door to allow for new businesses to come in. That has not been the case. As we go forward now, I just want to try to get an understanding from EDC, what is the vision with using the term incubator when we have tenants that have been there for 5, 6, and 10 years? So it's one, to discuss how we're going to use this asset. Two, it's come out of the strong fight that we had with rezoning, where there's over $17 million being spent in this particular East Brooklyn bid, of which 6 or 7 is going into a facility that's 1970-ish antiquated manufacturing facility. So it's really needed. What I'm here to say is that I would just like to memorialize the fact with EDC, our willingness to continue working with them to come up with a salient vision, along with the Councilwoman's Office and CB 16, 1. 2, since we're spending $6 or $7 million in our industrial park, and one of our core industries happen to be businesses that are in the buildings trade, for local companies to have an opportunity to bid on the project, so that we can also be environmentally green and also help our community because they also hire locally. And thirdly, to continue working with EDC as it relates to this project and giving us timely information and not to operate in a vacuum. And I'll close with saying that we do have a good working relationship. Part of the rezoning, we've gone through a rebranding, they've developed new assets, where our new tagline is "Industry lives in East New York." And this can be a significant and advantageous project if done correctly. And I just wanted to memorialize that. Thank you.
And I thank you, Mr. Wilkinson. Do we have any other questions or statements before we move to vote? I would like to have a motion to approve the proposed lease of the East New York Industrial Building.
Jack Pleshnik, make a first motion for Councilman Deutsch's office.
Second.
May I have a second? What is your name, please?
Janice Morgan, CB 16, second.
Only Community Board 16 members and members of the City Council and Borough President Adams are eligible to vote on this matter. Community Board 16?
Yes.
Councilmember Barron?
Yes.
Councilmember Cornegie? Councilmember Cumbo? Councilmember Deutsch?
Yes.
Councilmember Espinal? Councilmember Brannan?
Yes.
Councilmember Lander? Councilmember Levin?
Yes.
Councilmember Mizell? Councilmember Ampry Samuel?
Abstain.
Abstain. Councilmember Williams? Are there any other council members on the floor that I've missed, that came in late? No, okay. Borough President Adams? The motion carries.
Okay, so the motion carries. I have in the agenda, sorry, Daniel, you're gonna have to be last. Richard Berrick has to leave, and he was going to do the first presentation tonight, so I'm gonna call Richard up. Thank you. Please, thank you. All right. Thank you, EDC, sorry. Thank you.
So tonight's sixth agenda item, moving up, is a public hearing and vote regarding a proposed zoning text amendment to limit the siting of hotels in manufacturing districts to those granted a special permit by the City Planning Commission. City Planning made its most recent presentation to the Borough Board in May and subsequently presented to all requesting community boards so that the item should be familiar. Though we do have our representatives tonight from the Department of City Planning to be available to take questions if there are any from board members. I'd like to welcome city planners Jacqueline Sunwoo, and she's a city planner with the Housing, Economic, and Infrastructure Division, and Karenza Wood, who is a city planner with our neighboring Brooklyn office. And if you guys could come to the podium to state your name for the record in case anybody would like to reach out to you. Mike there.
Thank you, Richard. I'm Jackie from the Department of City Planning. And Karenza Wood, Department of City Planning, Brooklyn office.
So at this time, I'd like to open up to the floor to any members of the Borough Board or their representatives who have questions or comments they'd like to make on the application regarding the M1 Hotel special permit. Okay. Are there any members of the public then would like to make a comment or question? Okay, so thank you for being available tonight. That concludes the business-related for setting this up for a public hearing. So we're going to open the floor up for a formal public hearing if anybody would like to make a statement. Okay, I don't see anybody to do that. We have nobody signed up, right? Okay, so now, if there's anyone who is not a member of the Borough Board, is not signed in, that would like to make a comment. Okay, moving on. So we circulate, oh, Bill, you have a hand up, okay. If you want to grab one of the nearby mics. State your name for the record, Bill.
Bill Wilkins, Director of Economic Development for the LDC of East New York. I just wanted to weigh in that as this is hopefully going to be one of the tools in our economic development toolbox. From the vantage point, there's been a proliferation of transient hotels and shelters using a lot of our viable manufacturing space in the East Brooklyn zone. Like right now, we have a building that's going up right in our industrial park, so this is a real issue. And I would hope that it would have been a race to the bottle when the mayor came out with his 10-point industrial plan years ago. So I'm really hopeful that this legislation or this permit has the teeth that we need so we'll be able to prevent losing a lot of our manufacturing space, especially in East Brooklyn.
Thank you. Any additional would like to comment? Go ahead.
Good evening again, Glomani from Councilmember Stephen Levin's office. So I just wanted to speak to that, speak to the gentleman's point regarding homeless shelters, and I know that was a question that we had posed to you as well, Richard, regarding the resolution. So, you know, on that note, it's the city's stance that they're trying to pull out of hotels as far as shelter agreements and contracts with hotels. So on that note, you know, I would just add that this is something that I know the council, in particular the Committee on General Welfare, will be watching, and Department of Homeless Services, just to determine the scope of the influence it would have on shelter siting, but that it does seem to be in keeping with policy objectives of the city, of the administration, knowing that we have to pull out of these agreements with hotels wherever possible, sticking to standalone shelters and the like, everything else in keeping with policy when it comes to shelter.
Go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Cesar Zuniga, Community Board 7. Our community board didn't take a position on this particular text amendment, and I just sort of want to go on record again to reiterate why we took that position. We just don't feel comfortable or confident that the amendment is written addresses the specific issues around public purpose exemptions. And again, to speak to the gentleman who talked about the proliferation of hotels, this is something, again, that's not just confined to one community, but many, including Sunset Park. So, you know, I sort of want to urge the administration to really think through, you know, when you approach this with sort of a cookie cutter approach and don't take the local sort of realities of communities, I think sometimes we miss the mark. So, again, encourage you guys to really think through the historical and the sort of the cultural context that's going on in specific communities. Because again, it seems like a very slippery slope toward just taking advantage of this particular loophole around public purposes.
Thank you. Any last questions or comments? Okay. Irene, go ahead.
Irene Janner, Community Board 2. We did take a position in favor of the amendment. We also had concerns that if it's not safe for regular hotel visitors, why is it okay for the homeless? So we have a little problem. You know, we'll shove them in places that we don't think are good for other residents. And secondly, we do favor it very much because we have a situation, like we have the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which is wonderfully successful, and there's a lot of M1 property around the Navy Yard, but it's becoming non-affordable for industrial uses because of the competition by hotels.
Okay, again, anybody else with a question or statement to make? Okay, so we'll move on. So we will now discuss the proposed resolution regarding city planning zoning text amendment application to require hotels to be granted a special use permit in M1 manufacturing districts. The draft resolution was circulated late yesterday. You received a slightly updated version of it today, that's what you have in front of you. It generally calls for consideration of a restriction of the applicability for being eligible to apply for a hotel special permit to properties in M1 districts located not more than 400 feet, so it's shrinking the area of applicability to a boundary of the district that either permits residential use as of right and/or commercial district where such hotels are permitted as of right. Additionally, it recommends that the excluded areas, which are in the application established by the airports, that there be 4 specific sections of Brooklyn, and there were maps, there are 8.5 by 14 maps that show some colors in orange that these would be in, mostly Borough Park, a little bit going into Midwood, Parkville, the southern section of Borough Park, the eastern section of Borough Park, a little bit in the Ocean Parkway Special District that's also in Community District 12, so they're primarily in Districts 12, a little bit in 14. Finally, there's a statement it makes that calls on the Department of Homeless Services to adhere to the standards consistent with any non-public purpose hotel to be granted a special use permit in an M1 district. And before establishing an agreement to operate a public purpose hotel in the M1 district as a means to ensure that the shelter residents would be safeguarded from industrial activities and other related vehicular conflicts, as well as other potential negative pedestrian experiences. So whatever the City Planning Commission would have to look at for a special permit, the idea is that the city agencies responsible for granting the comments, even though the hotels would be as of right, that they would at least think about those issues before deciding to grant a comment. So we'd like to see if any member of the board or their representatives have any final comments. And if you note in the draft resolution, there's a couple of words that are highlighted in bold. Those were the changes from what we received yesterday. A couple of changes made in the first one. Joy and I spoke earlier today, so a couple of words we thought would help provide clarity. The boundaries were moved from 62nd to 61st to get the boundary correct. So a couple of the streets there you'll see were cleaned up a little bit to be consistent with the maps. So again, if there are any representatives that have final comments, questions on the proposed modifications to the draft resolution.
I just want to,
Glomani,
sorry, Glomani from Councilmember Levin's office. I just want to clarify that Councilmember Levin is supporting it to support manufacturing, but, you know, as Chair of General Welfare, that he would just want to ensure that shelters are able to be sited when needed.
Any additional comments or questions? Okay, so I'd like to thank our colleagues, Ms. Sunwoo and Ms. Wood, for being available tonight for the Borough Board. And now we would like to have a motion to approve the M1 text amendment with the proposed modifications in the statement.
Motion to approve.
Do you need Teresa's name?
Community Board 50, Teresa Scaff.
Perfect. Do we have a second? Go ahead.
Robert Camacho, CB4, second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So all community board members and members of the City Council and Borough President Adams are eligible to vote on this matter. Keisha, please take the call.
Councilmember Barron?
Yes.
Councilmember Carnegie? Councilmember Cumbo? Councilmember Deutsch? Councilmember Espinal? Councilmember Brannan?
Yes.
Councilmember Bradlander? Councilmember Levin?
Yes.
Councilmember Mizell? Councilmember Alika Ampry Samuel? Abstain. Councilmember Williams? CB1?
Yes.
Community Board 2?
Yes.
CB3?
Yes.
CB4?
Yep.
5. CB7?
Yeah, abstain.
No problem. CB8? CB9, CB10. CB11?
Yes.
CB12?
Yes.
CB13? CB14?
Yes.
CB15?
Yes.
CB16? CB17? Borough President Adams? Yes. Okay, so motion carries. Thank you, Richard. And I want to thank all of the Borough Board members. We're heading down the pasture now. Joy, please don't leave so we can finish up. Come on, come on, come on. You've been great. And I want to thank all of you who came on time, especially. So tonight's 5th agenda item, which is actually the 4th agenda item, is a presentation and a vote on a resolution and support of the New York State Homes and Community Renewal Main Street Facade Improvement Grant. And we have one of our former board members here with us to make it. Yes, Daniel, and we miss you and we welcome you back. Here to make a presentation on behalf of the Pitkin Avenue Business Improvement District. So Daniel, welcome.
Thank you. I'm sure that Cesar is an improvement upon my membership on the board. But I do have great news for everybody. You will not be required tonight to either vote or sit through a presentation for our request. But I did want to come by because the chair and the borough president and the board were really kind enough to put us on the agenda at the last minute. But since then, we've spoken to the Community Board 16, and they will arrange a meeting on the 24th specifically to have a presentation and a vote on this, as it should be. But I wanted to take this opportunity just to give you kind of an explanation of why we asked for this. One was a big mistake by the bid. We did not set the timing correctly for the community board to get a resolution for an application for the Main Street facade improvement grant that the state offers. As the gentleman from NYSERDA said, this is another opportunity to bring some state money to Brooklyn and to specific parts of Brooklyn. The Main Street grant goes to an economic development organization. It doesn't have to be a bid, but it goes directly for the improvements of commercial buildings within a district. So we applied 3 years ago. We didn't get it. We applied 2 years ago, and we did win, largely due to pushing hard. And we could not do it without the help of our partners in the district. And certainly, this is important for all the chairs of community boards. We cannot do it, we cannot apply for this grant without a resolution from a community board. You could get one from a borough board or the city council, but I think it's most applicable because it's so local to community boards. And so as a former member of this board and as a member of a community board, I know one of the most frustrating things about being on a community board is your status as an advisory body when it comes to this. The resolution for applications on Main Street grants that supports an organization that applies for them really means that the board has a lot of teeth when it comes to winning this money for your districts or for that certain part of your district, usually your downtown portion. So we will be, I did have a very short presentation to show you what we've done since we've won. It is a very difficult thing to actually put together because you are really competing with organizations all over the state. These are grants that are really designated for small towns. They were written for small towns upstate that were hurt hard by the shift in industrial and commercial and kind of Rust Belt depletion. So when city neighborhoods apply for them, they kind of don't get the ready response that uptown states do, which also makes the community boards' involvement in this process very important. Once you do get them, there's no guarantee you can execute them. I know 2 other bids in the last 4 years that have won these grants, and these grants have only been awarded to about 3 or 4 organizations in the city of New York. And 2 of them could not execute them, had to give the money back. $250,000 they had to give back to the state because they couldn't get an owner to agree to invest in their property and get essentially $50,000 of money in reimbursements. So they're difficult to put together, but they are very helpful. I want to invite, if you'd like to see the presentation that I did, just email me at execdirector@pitkinAvenue.nyc, and I'll be happy to send it. Or you can come on the 24th to Community Board 16. Again, thank you, Janice, for scheduling a July meeting. She's not happy about it, I know.
Well, she saved us having to sit through thank you. And thank you, Daniel.
We take care of our business at CB16, so no, we are not happy that we have to call a special meeting But because I have respect for my board members, I called a special meeting because they're entitled to hear the presentation and also ask the questions that are necessary in order to move on it. And so I do not think that it was appropriate for you to go over our heads because you made the mistake of not scheduling the meeting properly and that you would disregard the 50 board members and not allow them to ask their questions when they're raising concerns about the Pickens Avenue bid and take this matter up here. That's not appropriate.
Right.
Okay,
So,
but we want to just say thank you.
okay.
All right, thank
Okay,
you.
again-
Great presentation. Thank you. We're going to end on a high note.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you, and thank you, Janice. So
All right.
the sixth and final presentation tonight. Finally, my patient ladies, I thank you kindly. Ladies, it takes 5 minutes. 5 minutes. So 5 minutes. So that's all we need is 5 minutes. So if you can. They waited 5 minutes if you can. All right, thank you. All right, so tonight's sixth and final agenda item is a presentation for the Center for New York City Neighborhoods on its Resiliency Assessment Program, Flood Help NY, and opportunities for making homes and businesses more energy efficient. Representatives of the Center for NYC Neighborhoods are here tonight and will be available to take questions from the Borough Board members. So let's welcome, these two ladies have been very patient, so we want to welcome Ms. Corey Johnson and Ms. Wisbel Tavares. Did I say that properly?
Yeah.
Okay. Please come to the podium and state your name and title for the record.
Hello, my name is Rosabel Tavares, and this is my colleague, Corey Johnson, from the Center for New York City Neighborhoods. Thank you so much for extending an invitation and allowing us to present. So today we're going to talk about our sustainability and resiliency programs. So just a brief description of what we're going to talk about. We're going to state our mission as a Center for New York City Neighborhoods. I'm going to delve into our sustainability programs. Corey will talk about our resiliency programs. And we will provide contact information at the end for you all to reach out to us. And if you have any further questions, we'll be happy to answer those at the end. And also our supervisor, Jennifer Leisure, is providing material to further help the understanding of our programs. So the Center for New York City Neighborhoods is a nonprofit organization that aims to promote and protect affordable homeownership throughout New York City by allowing middle and working class families to create thriving and strong communities. And the way we do that is through a myriad of services. So we help with mortgages. We have a program for foreclosure prevention. We also have a program on coastal communities, which Corey will be talking about. We also deal with scam prevention, and we also have a program related to rehabs and retrofits, which leads us to our sustainability programs. So the reason why the center created our sustainability program is because in its mission in aiding homeowners who are from middle and working classes, that we thought it was important for them to have the opportunities to make their homes energy efficient and also have access to affordable renewable energy. You guys got the contacts from the gentleman from NYSERDA. This is statewide, and we want everyone to be able to be a part of these goals and the mission. So we are funded by the New York State Energy Research Development Authority, and we're acting through this program called the Community Energy Engagement Program. So the purpose of this program, or the problems rather that it aims to tackle, is high utility bills, which I'm sure all of us don't like those, and along with that, the high cost of implementing energy efficiency improvements. There's also the lack of comfort in our homes due to issues like drafty rooms, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. We also would like to address health and safety hazards, such as poor indoor air quality, which could lead to asthma and gas leaks and other issues that could really harm our family's health. And also, as mentioned previously during the meeting, we want to address a harmful impact on the environment that comes from our energy consumption and our large carbon footprint. So the benefits of the program is that you will have a guide, and anyone who participates through our program, to reach the ultimate goals of lowering your utility bills, decreasing your energy waste, reducing your carbon footprint, and all while doing all of that, you'll also be improving your home's comfort and safety. And the way we help you do that is by connecting you with energy contractors who are experts in the area of energy efficiency. And we also help anyone who comes through our programs access grants or any financial opportunities that can help them reach that goal of reducing their energy waste and their utility bills. So program eligibility is statewide, as mentioned, and basically anyone in Brooklyn is pretty much eligible. We aim to assist homeowners, tenants, property owners, and small businesses. So this is the ideal program process track, but as I mentioned, we do want to assist a broad range of residents of Brooklyn and New York City as a whole. So we really aim to tailor the process based on the individual's needs and goals. So this process isn't going to look the same for everyone, but for the most part, people would start by engaging a community energy advisor, which would be Corey or I or our colleague Will Norton, who's not here tonight. And then we would refer them to a home energy assessment, and then they will go to energy financing with the ultimate goal of reaching that retrofit, which will make their home more energy efficient. So as I mentioned, Corey and I are known as community energy advisors, and basically we are a resource to help anyone who wants to reach those energy efficiency goals to get there. And the way we help is by first identifying the needs and goals of that individual. We then recommend programs and any financial incentives out there that they're eligible for to help them reach those goals. And we connect them to qualifying contractors based on their needs. And we also basically will assist them from initial contact until the very end when their retrofit is completed. So as I mentioned, we have a home energy assessment, and this is a free to reduce cost assessment for homeowners that's conducted by experienced and trained contractors, again, who are experts in the field of energy efficiency. They go into the home and provide an in-depth analysis of where the home is wasting energy. And from that, they create a detailed, personalized report as to where the home is inefficient and also what fixes and changes can be made to fix those inefficiencies. So then once the individual has a report, they come back to us, or if they need further assistance, we can also refer them to expert housing counselors, and we would basically identify any financial incentives out there, whether they be grants, rebates, low interest loans, in order to reach those goals and any of the recommendations from the contractor, from the homeowner's assessment. So if you guys are wondering what an energy efficient retrofit might look like, it might look like any of these things. Again, because we're assisting so many different types of people with different types of homes, it really varies, but it could include air sealing, something as simple as just sealing cracks within a facade of a home, to replacing inefficient appliances, and it could go to bigger projects such as oil to gas conversion, robust insulation of a home or apartment, and the installation of solar panels. So that's our sustainability program. You have some materials there, and then I'm going to pass it on to Corey to end this all with our resiliency program.
Thank you, Rosie. Okay. So now I will be speaking about our resiliency programs and how the center aims to help coastal communities. So the center aims to educate homeowners on how they can lower their flood insurance rates and also how they can make their properties more resistant to future flooding and extreme weather. Our program is funded by the Governor's Office for Storm Recovery. The three programs that the center offers is the Home Resiliency Audit Program, the Sewer Backwater Valve Installation Program, and our website, floodhelpny.org. So the problems that we seek to address with our programs is increasing risk of flooding due to rising sea levels, potential structural damage, and rising flood insurance rate due to changes in legislation and the expansion of FEMA's flood insurance rate maps. So here we have FEMA's flood insurance rate map, otherwise known as FIRM, for the Southeast Brooklyn waterfront. The yellow areas indicate moderate risk, and the red areas indicate high risk. Firms not only speak to the potential risk of flooding, but also to the government-mandated flood insurance purchase requirement. On the left here, you see the 1983 flood insurance rate map, and on the right, you see the 2013 advisory firms. So the 2013 advisory firms, as you can see, include a lot more areas in the flood zone. Until new firms are created by FEMA, folks should look to this advisory map to see where their flood risk is, and also what their flood insurance purchase requirement could look like. It's also important to note that the government can force place insurance onto residents in these high-risk flood zones, so it's important that they are aware and able to choose the right insurance for themselves. So, this is where our home resiliency audit program comes in. The goals of our program are to help people to learn about how to reduce their flood risk and also get an accurate flood insurance rate. So eligible property owners can receive a free home resiliency assessment of their property by qualified engineers, free elevation certificate that can potentially lower their flood insurance rate, and free resiliency counseling. The eligibility for our home resiliency audit program is for single-family homes, small buildings of 1 to 4 units, and multifamily buildings with 5 or more units. Our eligible Brooklyn neighborhoods are Red Hook, the Southeast Brooklyn waterfront neighborhoods including Mill Basin, Marine Park, Bergen Beach and Flatlands, Gravesend and Bensonhurst, Sheepshead Bay and Garrettson Beach, and the Southern Brooklyn Peninsula neighborhoods including Seagate, Coney Island, Brighton Beach, and Manhattan Beach. So our current program process is step 1, the application through our website, floodhelpny.org, the home resiliency audit scheduling and then conducting of the audit, step 3, the resiliency counseling, and for eligible property owners, step 4, the backwater valve installation. So our current application, you would first apply on floodhelpny.org by entering your address to determine the home's flood zone, and then answer 9 short questions. These questions relate to prior sandy damage, number of units, etc. The second step would be to verify your identity by submitting to us a copy of your identification, and then to self-certify by signing the information that you've given to us is correct and giving consent to officially enroll in the program. So this is our current program application process, but our program guidelines are changing, so it's important to act now. This will be our application process now through August 31st. To go through the current program track, residents would need to submit their application, schedule their home resiliency audit, and have the audit conducted before August 31st. So because of our August 31st deadline, we encourage you to tell your residents to apply now. So the home resiliency audit, that would be conducted by a team of engineers and surveyors that would come to the home and measure all areas of the property. The assessment would take a maximum of 2 hours, and the data that will be processed after the assessment will be used to create the elevation certificate, which details the home insurance premium as it relates to the base flood elevation. So the elevation certificate details the home's elevation above sea level to determine not only the risk, but what the property owner should be paying in flood insurance. So for resiliency counseling, homeowners will receive their audit report and elevation certificate detailing their home's flood risk. Homeowners will receive a customized resiliency plan with mitigation options based on their flood risk, flood insurance, and financial situation. During the counseling session, homeowners will find out if their property needs a sewer backwater valve and if they are eligible to receive one through the program. So our sewer backwater valve program. So a sewer backwater valve is a passive device installed in the pipe that connects a property to a municipal sewer. In the event of sewer overflow, the sewer backwater valve is forced closed by the reverse pressure as shown in this graphic here, and this prevents sewage from flowing back into the home. Homeowners should expect to be present during the pre-installation appointment for the sewer backwater valve installation process. The pre-installation appointment will allow the plumber and inspector to inspect the work area, and this meeting should take about 1 to 2 hours. Homeowners should also be present during the backwater valve installation and final inspection. Both processes will take about 1 to 2 days in total. During the installation process, homeowners also need to note that they will not be able to use water faucets anywhere in the home. Finally, we have our website, floodhelpny.org. Floodhelpny.org was created to engage and inform all New York City residents about how they can protect their homes and finances from flooding. So you are able to find your home on the flood map, get a flood insurance estimate, and also find out tips on how to lower your risk and rate. So here is our contact information. You can feel free to email any questions to our sustainability or resiliency email, and also we have our CPAT line as well as our homeowner hub for questions about resiliency. So I am assigned to Northern Brooklyn. I have community boards 1 through 6, 8 and 9, and 16 through 18, and Rosabelle was assigned to Southern Brooklyn with community boards 7 and 10 through 15. So feel free to contact us regarding these programs.
Thank you, ladies. Do we have any questions?
Yes.
Teresa's first, then
Teresa Scavo, CB15. Where are you getting your engineers from?
My name is Jennifer Lager. We have engineers out of Dewberry and Aptum. Dewberry is the name of the organization, the engineering organization.
Where are they located?
Dewberry. That's a good question.
Are they local?
Yeah, both of them are local, Dewberry and Aptum. I can get you more information around their
Are you the only
location.
one doing the elevation certificates in Southern Brooklyn?
To our understanding, yeah. This is the only program that exists whereby we give free elevation certificates to participants in programs throughout New York City.
And there's no not-for-profits that are also doing it?
Not to our understanding. We are partnered with other community-based organizations, Neighborhood Housing Services of Brooklyn.
Housing.
Yes, so they are not the engineers. They're conducting outreach and the counseling, the resiliency counseling that comes after the resiliency audit.
They're handling a particular case.
Mm-hmm.
Who hires the engineer who comes in and does the survey?
The Center for New York City Neighborhood. So we subcontract out to both the engineering firms and the counseling firms.
Because we've received several complaints. The engineers came exhausted that they're traveling from Pennsylvania, coming to do the surveys in, today was East 21st Street. And she said the engineer came, he looked like he was falling asleep. He said he had a 4-hour drive to get there. And then she felt her entire flood elevation was incorrect. So maybe you should look into where the engineers are coming from.
Yeah, I'd love more information about this particular case if you're able to provide that.
Connect after. No problem.
do we have any other questions?
Yeah, I have one question.
Richard, please.
Richard Flatto, Community Board 3. I had a couple of questions about the Community Energy Engagement Program. One, are there any income limits on that program? Second thing, is there any criteria in terms of how many dwelling units? So, you know, is it any kind of housing, or is it like 1 to 4 family? And then the last thing, is it just restricted to residential? Or could it be residential or commercial or mixed use?
Yeah, so the Community Energy Engagement Program in itself is not restricted to anybody of any income, nor is it restricted to anybody living in any size building. So we are here as resources to assist anybody. Now, the resources that we could refer you to will all be dependent on those particular programs and the parameters that those programs have.
So, I'm sorry, so you cover both residential and commercial property too?
So we're contracted to help serve small businesses, but the larger businesses, no.
Given that, Janice
Excuse me.
Morgan, CB16, given that certain areas are in low flood zones and they would not normally, have issues with flooding, are you only recommending this for the areas that are in the flood zones, or with regards to like resiliency planning for other homeowners, is there anything else that this flood analysis might reveal about the home with regards to like water damage, et cetera?
Yeah, right now with the Home Resiliency Audit Program, we are limited to serve those 9 neighborhoods listed there. However, there are resources on floodhelpny.org that are available for all New Yorkers, and folks can go in, see where they are on the flood map, and then type in certain particularities of their home to see what it is they can do to make their homes more resilient.
Do we have any other questions? No other questions? So I want to thank you. We had 2 very young, nice young ladies, and we want to commend you for doing a stellar job, and we want to encourage you to keep, speaking publicly. And thank you. Okay. So I guess we've come to the end of our road, and no, you guys were awesome. So may I please have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting? Okay, so Teresa Scavo, you made a motion to adjourn. Richard Flateau, second the motion to adjourn. All in favor? All of those against? Any abstentions? Okay, so thank you so much. You can cut it off the...